Hi, my name is Amanda, and this is my book talk. I'm looking at 3 different books today. All of them have a theme of like illness going on, and some of them have like a race for the cure. Well, all of them have a race for a cure actually. So this kind of how I tied them all together. I opted to go with my handy dandy Kindle as my source for reading the books. I'm a big Kindle person. I really think that appeals to a lot of readers, especially young readers. But for the first book that I looked at, it was called Fire and Flood. And you're probably wondering why I'm holding a teddy bear, and I also have an egg here. The race actually starts with an egg. So our main contender, her name is Tella. She has to go off to find an egg. So she's going to find this egg that's going to hatch a Pandora. She doesn't really know what the race is all about. She just knows it would provide a cure for her brother who's sick with this disease. The doctors can't really help him. So she wants to go and find this egg so she can be a part of the race. So she goes and she actually struggles. She gets the last egg after getting in a fight with another girl. The girl pulls her hair, which actually results in her chopping off all of her hair later in the book, so it won't hinder her any further. But the egg hatches into a Pandora, which her Pandora was a fox. I have a little fox patch here, to kind of give you an idea. Her fox was black, but, just to kind of, get you involved with some props. Wanted to play at the fox. Some people had a bear. She actually later kind of becomes like I don't know how to phrase it. She becomes very popular with the other Pandoras and wants to, they really want to be around her. They stand up for her. So she ends up, having a bear as her Pandora as well. So she has multiple Pandoras throughout the books. It's a 2-book series. The first one, as I mentioned, is called Fire and Flood, and the second one is called Salt and Stone. The first one was definitely my favorite. I was really engaged and involved in reading it, and I was really wow, this is such a good book. And I actually picked it because it was on a list of sci-fi and fantasy books that were standalone books, because I didn't want to get involved in reading a series or getting sucked into reading a series, because sometimes they just take so long. My computer is going dark. But yeah, I got involved with this one, and I was really glad when I flipped to the last page of the book and there was an ad for the second book, because I'm like, yes, there's more for me to read. So when I started Salt and Stone, I really flew through that book because it was so quick. They're really quick reads, so that's good, because I know that appeals to busy teens and busy adults like myself. So that was fun. But back to the book, Fire and Flood. I really love the covers. Let me see if I can pull this up so you can see it. I'm still not 100% skilled in my Kindle. I've had it for a while, but I don't get to read as often as I would like to. There's the cover. You can see it has a big eye on it. Well, that one has a feather, which is part of the story. The other book in this sequence has an eye. So, it's important. The feather is important to the storyline because it's something that was given to her by her mother. So she has that as she's going through these quests and trying to keep her brother and her family in mind. How she's doing it all for them. But the quest takes her through different terrains. So she's going through various areas. Like she starts in the jungle and she encounters this guy whose name is Sky. So that was exciting for her, because she was meeting people and getting involved with them. And, she wasn't doing this by herself, and it gave this really fleshed out the story to have these other characters in there. Like there was one character who when they were in the desert, she got bit by a rattlesnake. So they had to cut off her finger to keep the poison from spreading. So, different people, different scenarios, it really, Victoria Scott, the author, she really knows how to amp up the drama. So that, added to the drama and kept you on the edge of your seat as you're reading. In the second book, which is called Salt and Stone, she continues with the story, except this time one of the characters who had won one of the various stages of the competition. So there were like stages, and this woman won 5 years of the cure for her daughter, except her daughter passed away before she got to use it, unfortunately. So this woman comes back, and you encounter her, and she actually ends up, she says that she's going to help win the race for Tella, our main character. And so that was exciting, that she was back and, involved in the story again. And, to bring her back, that it was, it added an element of interest, because it's like, oh, why are the people who are running this race letting her come back? And you learn in the first book, towards the end, from Guy, who had been training for this race his whole life, that the people were a part of like a big pharmaceutical scandal. There was like, they created these Pandoras, the animals with superpowers, and they decided that, that wasn't right, so they set the building with all of them on fire. But the guy who started the project, his daughter was inside and she passed away. So he, in the fire, so he decided they were going to hold this race for the cure, but for this illness, but ultimately they are actually injecting the people with something, making them sick. So it's part of a big pharmaceutical kind of scandal. So it's also kind of a comment on that. I know when I was a teenager, I was really interested in like diseases and things like that. I'm not very like medically inclined in the slightest, but I was really interested in like illnesses and like Typhoid Mary, stuff like that. So when I was reading this book and discovered that it was about illnesses, I'm like, oh, that really would have intrigued me. It intrigues me now, but it definitely would have intrigued me as a teenager, because they're creating this world where this illness could happen, and with sci-fi, something that really could happen. This isn't that far-fetched. Like, people could purposely make people sick and then withhold the cure. I mean, that's not something that's too far off. I mean, some people think now that they're withholding cures from people, as part of, big pharmacy money scandals. So it's definitely something that's has a bigger comment on like societal stuff. So I enjoyed that aspect as well. In terms of, like the readability, I definitely would say, this was something that was quick and easy to read. It really flew through them. I really enjoyed, the books, the race. I really, got to know the characters, and I was really able to put myself in Tella's shoes as I was reading along. Like, there was one instance where she got into an altercation with another contender, someone else who was racing for the cure, and he actually passed away. So in the second book, she brings his brother into the fold, so he comes and is part of the race, trying to see what would happen, and they discover that people are actually betting on them, like their race horses, as to who will win the race. So there's a lot of things that are going on negatively, and they have this plan to go in to the the top 5 are offered a job afterwards working with the race and the cure and all that. So they have this plan to go in and kind of infiltrate from the inside to put an end to the cure in that situation. So that's something that was pretty cool. So I enjoyed their plan to kind of take over, and it was easy to imagine yourself in their shoes, taking over, wanting to be one to take over at the very least. So that was exciting. The third book I read was by a different author. It was called The Last Dog on Earth. And I read this book as a teenager, so it's I came back and revisited it for this project. I really loved it as a teenager, and I still love it now. It's about a boy and his dog. The dog, he kind of befriends him. The dog's name is Jack. He befriends Jack. He kind of doesn't really have any friends, so this is something this new to him. It's like having a companion and being involved with someone. So he is happy to have this dog by his side, but there's this disease that's sweeping the nation. It's a prion disease. I might be saying that wrong. And it's basically causing, kind of like rabies, causing dogs to go mad. And, people can be affected by it if they're bitten or, the disease is transferred to them. So they're taking precautions to prevent the disease from, taking over. So they're basically, exterminating all the dogs in the United States. So, Logan and Jack, Jack is really important because they find out later that he is the one that he has immune to the disease. So they find out that he can hold the key to the cure. So that's exciting, and I enjoyed the struggle to keep Jack alive because there's all these obstacles when having a dog when it's virtually illegal to have a dog during that time. So that was really fascinating for me, to hear about, and I have pets, and I couldn't imagine, not being able to have a pet. So that was, really relatable. Excuse me. And, so I really enjoyed that book. I would definitely would recommend that one. And it also kind of tied into the books that I read by Victoria Scott, because those were also related to disease, so it was kind of like a comment on society and the diseases and what could happen in a sci-fi kind of world. So that part was very fascinating for me. So I hope you enjoyed this book talk. Thank you so much for listening to me.